Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of our Ask the Broncolor Assistant webinar series. If this is your first time, thanks for joining us. And if you've come back through all the other three, welcome back. We're happy to have you here. Before we get going today, want to just have a second to introduce everybody and get us going. We're going to be talking packs versus monolights today, trying to help you decide which one's going to be the best for your workflow. As always, please feel free to ask your questions in the Q&A section. We're going to do things a little bit differently this time, where we're going to actually take a couple of breaks during the presentation and answer all those questions. So please, if we don't answer it right away, keep in mind we're going to get you all taken care of sooner than later. I think with that in mind, also please make sure to visit us on social media at Broncolor USA across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of the places in between. My name is Blake Griffin, and I'm the brand manager here for Broncolor in the U.S. And let's go ahead and I will get introduced our man of the hour. Galvin Collins is a photographer and cinematographer working in Portland, Oregon. He spent over 12 years splitting his times as a stills assistant and first AC. As a stills assistant, he has helped bring photographers' visions to life. And as a first AC, he's helped keep the picture sharp. And he is our one and only Broncolor assistant, Galvin Collins.
There we go. There we go. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. And good morning, good afternoon. As Blake said before, any questions, please jump them out there. We've got Q&A breaks. And so don't hesitate to load us up with questions. I like questions. I like answering questions. And when you're done here, go check out Broncolor USA on YouTube. We're putting videos up there, and we'd love, some views and some feedback. If you got an opportunity, that'd be great. All right, jumping right in here, we are going to talk about packs and mono heads. This isn't a like which to buy type of webinar or information dump. It's kind of just talking about the right use for each one of these. It's kind of more of a it's an education idea of what their strengths are. So, the job of a photographer calls for a great variety of subjects and locations, both with unique gear needs. Talking about the differences of these lighting systems will help us meet those needs in the future. So what are we talking about? So I wrote my first draft of this webinar, and then I went online to go see if I was missing anything. And I Googled a bunch of stuff, and it was kind of interesting how much information is out there seems like misinformation for me about what these systems are called and terminology behind them. And so from a commercial photography background as an assistant, I'm just going to give you the information that I know, and hopefully we can clear some of that up. It may or may not be obvious. We are talking about strobes, also known as flashes or flash units. These lights create a pulse of light towards your subject that is sunk up to your camera to create a exposure that's brighter than available light. Also, hopefully a lot prettier or purposeful than available light as well. We do have one continuous light that we are going to talk about, and I will call that out when we are talking about it. So. Now, what are we talking about and what are these things? First, we are going to talk about the pack and head system. So I'm going to jump right over here. A pack and head system is pretty much any lighting system that uses a power pack to provide power to a flash head. And that flash head is a housing that holds the flash tube and has the system for mounting modifiers. Right now we've got our P70 reflector, which is Broncolor's modifier of the month right now. I consider that the standard reflector, lots of grids and accessories that work for that, solid there. But we have our standard mounting bracket for modifiers built into the head there. The pack and head systems with Broncolor come with, this is the Scoro S 1600 jewel pack, and we are using a Pulso G head here for our reference. You can get this pack in a 3200 jewel variety, and you can also get the Scoro E system, which is a It also comes in 32 and 1600 joule capacity. We could talk about the specifics of that later, but the other pack and head system that Broncolor makes is the Move pack, which is the battery powered 1200 joule kit. I'm a fan of that one. It's pretty cool. So let's see. All of those packs can work with the variety of heads that Broncolor makes. It's only some of the specialty features that won't work with, say, maybe the Move kit, but we can talk about compatibility later. Let's talk about mono heads. Moving right along here is the mono head. This is any light that has the power plant, the flash tube, and the modifier mounting all built into one unit that sits on top of a stand. I got kind of black on black with my hoodie there. You can kind of see it. This is a Ceros L system, so it's the battery powered. You can get this Ceros L system in an 800 joule, a 400 joule. The Ceros also comes in an S version, which is your AC powered version. And the only other monolight that Broncolor makes is the LED F160, which, as I mentioned before, is the only continuous light we will talk about today. It is an AC powered or a battery powered monolight that can bring continuous lighting into a variety of situations. Very useful if you're trying to get a focus light on set when your modeling lights aren't exactly doing everything you need. You can bring that on, have a nice continuous light on subject that you can use to focus your camera to. One of many solutions that can do. So monolights. So we kind of got a little bit of an overview here. Are there any questions that we can answer now in our Q&A break?
Absolutely. So the question that we've got so far here, Galvin, is going to be something that we talked about in a previous webinar, but probably is not going to be a bad idea to bring up here. Any advice on how to limit a particular port's output on a Scoro 3200S when using 1600 joule lights for safety? The assistant is scared to increase the light and does not want to blow the bulb.
Okay, so that question kind of sounds like you've got a 1600 joule head and you're using a 3200 joule pack. And if that's the case, you just can't run the pack at full power. You have to be a full stop off of full power so that you're only running a maximum of 1600 joules to the head. Catastrophic explosion is also not what will happen. Generally speaking, if you are running and this is not a go ahead and do it type of thing, but if you're running a 1600 joule tube on a 3200 joule pack, it's not going to explode. They're designed in such a way that what's going to happen is the element within that flash tube that allows it to flash will burn out before it creates anything catastrophic. Again, it's not a license to go ahead and do it, but it's better to know, okay, if I'm running my 3200 joule pack and I've got my max display set at 10, so maximum power is 10, then you're not going to take that pack or that particular channel above a 9 power. And how you can keep these things straight and to reduce the accidents is I set this up just for this demonstration and I still did it. I write what the head is. So it's a Pulse OG and I write what modifier I have on there. So, I mean, like I said, this is such a habit that if I plug a light in, I write what's going down with it. And this has the P70 on it and it's a Pulso. And if I had one if I was running a 3200 pack and it was a 1600 joule head, I would write 1600 on there and then maybe even use a bright piece of tape to call that out. That way you can keep track of these things. So when you come back over to your pack and you're making adjustments, you can go, okay, I need to make sure I don't take channel 1 over a power of 9. That would I think that's what is limiting the power to a channel is just making sure you're not going above. I don't think there's no like safety system or anything like that other than, like I said, make a note and keep that note there. I hope that covers it. If not, let me know and we can elaborate more. Did we lose Blake? Okay, looks like we're moving on to pros. Okay, after we've kind of talked about what's going on with both of these systems, there is one overall pro, and this is one of the things that I really, really appreciate about the Broncolor system, is the overall pro, the Monolight pack and head system. They use the same modifier mounting brackets. So basically any of your standard Braun mounting, P70s, your soft boxes, your Paras, everything you can mount these to. There is only a few compatibility issues with some of the more specialty modifiers and more specific things. The size of the Ceros head, or the Ceros won't allow it to work with. So I say it can work with most the systems that are out there with the Broncolor modifiers. So if there is something very specific that you want to try to use, like a focus spot or something, just double check our compatibility charts. These can be made available in the packet that you'll get at the end of this. And this is, so yeah, you can just take that second. If there's something specific, you take that moment and make sure that what you want to use will work with the system you want to use. So moving into the pack and head system pros, I'll right off the bat say this is my favorite system to work with. As an assistant, I really, 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 really appreciate the pack and head system. I can get that head up high. I have the pack down low. I can see all the information. I can make quick changes. So I'm biased. I also do appreciate the Ceros because I've had to hike these in far distances, and I would rather hike this in than this and a generator. So, so going on to our pros, first off, power. Power, more power. The Scoro S 3200 Joule pack is amazing, as is the 1600 Joule pack. Any of these, you get way more power out of them. What does this mean to you? If you are on a location that has the sun and you are trying to bring that ambient level down, or you are trying to, match it to accentuate it, you've got the power to do that with your 3200 Joule or your 1600 Joule Scoro packs. They give you that power. Working with larger modifiers, if you are using, Braun makes really efficient modifiers, the soft boxes, but the Paras and those sorts of things. But say you rent a Scoro pack and you get an extra large soft box, and the rental house doesn't have the specific one you want, so you're using a different one. Some of those soft boxes can be very inefficient. They eat up a lot of the light. So having that more power gives you that ability to use that large modifier and push out more light. So yeah, and then gives you a lot of direct. I just said what I was going to just say again. So anyway, the other thing is you can use a lot more power to give yourself a larger f-stop. So giving yourself more depth of field while you're shooting allows your focusing system to, be more effective when you have more depth of field, and you can do that with more power. The next feature we're going to talk about in the pros column is the T0.1 stop action using flash duration equivalencies on this pack. It's the superpower of this pack. It's the Superman flying. It's the, Batman's money. It's everything that this pack, it's like the best of the best that this pack does. And what it is creating a flash equivalent, or a flash duration that is a shutter equivalency to create stop action effect. We've got a diagram up there that shows you where the light is off to where it's at its maximum power to where it's down, and how Broncolor rates that very close and very accurate so that your shutter duration equivalency is as close as it can be. That's the superpower. We are still planning on doing a whole webinar about T0.1, so we're not going to dive too deep in there. One of the other pros, let's go moving right along. Actually, I'm going to take a little sip of water here. All right. You can hook multiple heads up to a power pack. The Scoro S has 3 channels, so you can run up to 3 heads. So you can have a 3-point lighting system all based off of one pack. And when you're using, again, that more power, you've got the power to split between those 3 channels. So you can do a whole 3-point lighting setup, portrait setup, using one pack and 3 heads. The Scoro E has 2 channels, and the Move Kit has 2 channels as well. So keep that in mind. The heads are lighter. than the Monolight heads. So if you're going to rig these to the end of a boom, mini boom, maxi boom, super boom, you can get those all the way on the end there, and this is a lighter weight light to have on there. You have to have less counterweight, and it's a little bit safer. Rigging heavy things over people's heads is always the danger. I recommend using safety chains. I can't stress enough how cheap safety chains can keep you from getting in trouble with breaking equipment or hurting people. Pro tip. So you can get these lights into your grids. You can get them into all sorts of places, and their lightweight will be a benefit to you. The Ceros is a little bit more challenging because they are heavier. Again, safety chains, safety chains, safety chains. So lightweight head. Moving on to our cons. So right off the bat, this system requires electricity, requires power, and it requires a fairly robust power system. I mean, I've used them in places where we haven't had the most robust power, and you can very well get it done. Sometimes you'll blow some circuits. So my pro tip on this is when you are location scouting, always make sure you know where the outlets are. Make sure that you know those outlets are grounded, and then know where your breaker box is. This is something that whenever you work on a film or a cinema shoot, your grip and electric team will go and check this out. A lot of times they bring generators, but if you're working off house power, you need to know where that breaker box is. And while you're looking at that breaker box, make sure that you have 20 amp circuits. That makes things a lot easier. It's not that they won't work with a 15 amp circuit, but it's just more likely to not have any issues if you're running a 20 amp circuit. So a good and robust electrical system, and you have to have it. So if there's no electric, you've got to get a generator to run these. So weight. This pack is it's not light. It's a hefty pack, and the 3200 ones are bigger. They're a bit cumbersome. They're not easy to get from place to place, especially with their if they're in their safety cases, stuff like that. They can be big and cumbersome. Another pro tip I recommend: if you're carrying one, try to carry another one too to offset that weight. Keep that balance equal on the body so that you don't hurt individual sides of your body. Anyway, so yeah, carrying this in. Between this, a generator, the pack and heads, it's just not something that you can, if you have to hike into a location, that you can do. It's a little bit heavier and a little bit more cumbersome. It's interesting because the head is so light, but the pack is so heavy. That brings us to another point. The head has to reach the pack. So wherever you put this, whether it's in a power grid, on a boom, or whatever creative and interesting place that you find to put your light, you have to be able to reach a power pack with that. These packs, you can get the head extensions, which you lose a little bit of power when you do that. But there's 2 lengths of head extensions that you can get from Braun, and that'll help you get and make the distances that you're going to, but you are limited to the lengths of cable that you have on hand to where you can put that light. And that, I would say, is a con. Last, this light doesn't have high sync, which is a feature that we'll talk about when we talk about the pros for the Monolights here. This relies solely on the T0.1 flash duration stop action effect. And that's what that does. So it doesn't have access to high sync, which we'll talk about here in a moment. We're going to move to Monolights Pros. Is there any questions queued up, or should we just power through?
Let's keep rolling. I don't see any new questions that are pertinent quite yet, but as always, everyone, please feel free to ask those questions in our Q&A section. We've got a couple that have come through that our fast-fingered answering team are definitely on those, getting those answered as well.
Cool. We got a great team behind us. All right. So moving on to our Monolight system. Well, the simple fact that I can move the whole system with one hand on a stand is the first pro we're going to talk about: portability. Even though the mono head is heavier than the head in the pack and head system, this is the whole system, and you can fit it all on a stand and lift it quite easily. So as far as gear management and moving, that is such a pro. It makes it great for location shooting. So if you're going to go do a shoot 2 miles away from your closest parking on a beach in the dunes where you can't roll things on a cart, this is definitely your go-to system. Battery powered so that you can run out there. I was on a shoot where we had 4 lights, so 2 per backpack. And then we had a third assistant who was carrying stands and batteries. And so the 3 of us had a 4-light system that we took out 2 miles into the dunes. So that is definitely a pro. You would not want to try with the pack and head system to drag all that out there and then drag a generator. So that's one of those things when you know the logistics of the shoot that you are about to go on, you make those decisions between the portability, lightweight, robust power, those things. So the other one to talk about is your famous rooftop shoot. Always go for the rooftop shoot, right? But then you find out there's no elevator at the location and you've got to carry all the gear up. Again, 2 lights in a backpack and batteries and stands being something that you have to manually carry up to the top of a building versus carrying the heavy. I've done both on the rooftop. I've carried those up and I've carried this up, and I prefer to carry this up. I don't know what that says about me, but I'd like to think I'm pretty normal on this world as far as heavy lifting and whether you have to or not. So the next thing is less overall gear, less opportunity for dropping or loss. Managing gear on a shoot is can get out of hand if you don't have enough crew. So for all the folks out there that are the 1-person crew where you're photographing, you're setting up your own lights, you're doing this quick editorial shoot or big campaign, I've seen it go both ways, and you are managing, the more gear you're managing, the more your job is. So a tight, compact, all-together solution is definitely preferable, especially when this comes with a built-in reflector. So you can just pull the cap off and you're ready to shoot with some hard direct light from a reflector. And then it also has access to all the same modifiers, like I said, as the all the rest of the Braun ecosystem. So anyway, really great for your 1-person wonders who are out there working really hard and need something that's compact and has the least amount of elements. Also, less gear will give you less opportunity for breakage, I think. That could probably be a con on this, is the 1 unit could break and the whole thing could be done. But we're going to talk about our last pro, which is high sync. This on the Cirrus L. The high sync is a feature that Broncolor designed to help you bring ambient light down when you're in outdoor location shooting. So bright sunny day. And how it does that is it allows you to come off of your maximum sync speed on your camera, which is generally 1/200th of a second, and gives you up to 1/8000th of a second shutter speed. And that can allow that ambient light to come down so that your strobes can really be highlighted. The byproduct of this feature also is it allows you to do some stop action photography. Other lighting companies use the term high speed sync, and this is similar to that, different how it goes about doing it. But this light is set up so that you can get that higher sync speed with your camera. So what you choose to do with it is awesome. I like that feature. And it's not some, this also does have a speed mode. So it allows you to jump in and have a tight flash duration. You can use the app and you can get in there and see what your flash duration is. All right. Battery power. We've got great battery power options here. You get up to 440 flashes per battery, and that's on the 400 joule and the 800 joule Cirrus L. So again, great for locations. Again, everything in the unit, built-in reflector. You can get this light into places where maybe you can't get a pack and a head. You might be able to get the head, but getting the pack there. So this is just a good compact solution to get everything, to get light where you need it to be. Oh yeah. LED 160. I got LED F 160. There we go. I kind of stumbled on that. That is our one continuous light here that we are talking about. It also can use the same light shapers of the whole system, which is great for having a continuous light that works with all these same modifiers. And it's also battery or AC power. So kind of a really great amount of versatility there. So I just wanted to work that in before we move over to the cons of the Monolight system. Less power. We talked about power on the pack and heads. You are limited to the 800 joules or 400 joules that the Ceros will provide. Still a lot of very great working power there. And again, portable, great system, but you do have less power. If you're using larger modifiers, those can, like as I mentioned before, the benefit of those is you will be able to fill and deal with any of that inefficiency. This has just less power to deal with that. So the big thing for me on these is, and why I prefer the pack and heads, and again, personal opinion, is once this light gets up high, you very rarely, in my experience, have a light that is just right here at eye level that I can dial in all my choices and make all my changes. A lot of times this ends up high, tilted down, so I can't see the back. I can't make quick changes without either lowering it or getting a ladder or depending on an app. I personally don't like depending on an app. That's just a personal choice, but it does work and you can make those changes, using your phone. But for somebody like me who likes to do a tactile, just do a thing, that's one of my big cons is once it gets up high and it's out of reach, I have to either lower it down, which can be a no-go if you're trying to match lighting throughout a series of shots. And that for me is kind of just the big downside to using any mono head system. If you have it on a boom arm behind somebody and you need to change a battery or you need to change a stop or a setting, you got to go up there and either get a ladder and do it or lower it down. To me, that's the biggest downside. But again, portability, and that's it's a trade-off of knowing the real world uses of what you're doing. So I think that's our cons. I don't think I missed anything. So let's if there's any questions, let's do some questions.
Yeah, we'll move into Fritz here in the chat asks, how does the head extension cable for a power pack affect flash duration, if at all?
Ooh, actually, that is a good question. How I believe it affects the flash duration, you lose about a half a stop with a standard head extension. And some of our techs in the chat will have to chime in. But when you lose that half a stop, it's got to push more power. So the more power the pack is using, the less your flash duration is. So when you're working with those head extensions, you will lose that half a stop. So it'll let you know as you're metering it, because it doesn't tell you you're losing that half a stop, but you'll see it in your effect there. So you'll go up half a stop to compensate for that. And then you'll see your flash duration availability change. As far as like the actual pulse being changed or the head extension changing the nature of what that head's doing, it's not. It's just you'll have to compensate for that half a stop of loss, and that's adding more power, which reduces the ability of your flash duration.
Also asked, and I think I can take this one, why is using the Fresnel modifier, also what we call the fluter, a no-go for monolights? So in this case, Fritz, it's sort of a two-part answer. The first part is the glass dome that is on our Ceros heads is a little bit too far out in terms of its design, so that you don't have the ability to focus all of that Fresnel when it is mounted. The second piece involves more homogeneous light. We found that our pack and head systems with the appropriate dome produce a better light quality when used with the fluter. So we definitely recommend going that direction.
Also, the weight I think the fluter was originally designed for these heads before these were invented. So that weight, it becomes a lot of extra wear and tear on those joints. So yes, you can mount it in there. And as Blake said, the consistency of light won't be as intended by Braun in building it, but that extra weight that this light has, it makes it want to tilt. And then that makes you tighten it harder. And then you get to that point where you start stripping your tie downs and tighteners. And yeah, I would definitely recommend packing heads for the fluter and the Fresnel, the fluter Fresnel attachment. There we go.
And I think that's all the questions for the moment.
Okay.
So let's keep going.
All right. So what does all this mean? We kind of went over kind of the buckshot overview of packing heads and monolights. And where does this land us? Well, uses in the real world. You're a photographer and you're working with a client and they have a ask and they have a want. So you as a photographer have to take that and turn that into a photo shoot that has all the technical elements as well as the artistic. And we're going to, like, right off the bat, we're just going to talk about the technical. So essentially, you're going to have to ask yourself what the client is asking, and if they're asking for, first off, is what they want something you can achieve in the studio, or is it something that you're going to have to go to a location? If you are shooting in the studio, it lends itself to packs and heads just because of the robust power grid, generally access to grip and electric and different rigging and all those things and modifiers that make the pack and head system work out. And you don't have to worry about elements like wind, different things. A studio shoot can generally be smoother in its process. I said generally, though. There's enough space to move around in a studio, generally speaking, to use large modifiers. So you can get your larger Para 220s, 222s, and you can get your larger soft boxes. You can spread out. You can generally achieve a lot of interesting light and lighting inside of a studio. And finally, the control of the environment. This is kind of massive. You know, if you're in a studio, you can decide if you want your house lights up, your house lights down. If you want to have, you know, music play and whatever, you have total control, and that's of what you're achieving on the screen and of what's going on around you. That's kind of the nice thing about the studio. Location. It would be the other option, and that's depending on the situation. You know, packs and heads can work on a location shoot. I've done a lot of work on location with Scoro packs, and that's if you have access to power, you bring a generator, they are a great solution. When you are doing a location shoot, you're going to have to look into, and this is where your scouting goes, is it an interior or an exterior location? Interiors. What's your space available? I mean, if you're doing, you know, like if you're doing portraiture or editorial type work, sometimes people are working, like, imagine trying to do an editorial portrait for a food truck. I mean, you don't have a lot of space. You don't have a lot of room. So what system is going to work for you? I think in that situation, your monolight, small, you know, beauty box or reflectors, whatever, to create a nice lighting effect in there. I'm just thinking things off the top of my head there, but evaluate the amount of room you have, because that can be a really, you know, telling onto what you bring. Something that's on one stand, one light, or a pack head stand and modifier whole situation. So access to power. We talk about it. Power. It's one of the electricity is one of the things that you always need. You always want to look for. You never want to get to a location and find out they don't have house power. Where are the outlets? Where is that breaker box, as I mentioned earlier? Are you on 20 amp circuits? Is it a grounded system? Sometimes you go into older houses that are beautiful locations to shoot in, and you'll find that they don't have a very robust electrical system because they are many, many years old and they are sometimes not grounded. So it depends on if they've been updated. So look into the power and make sure. If you don't have access to good power, you make that decision. Do you bring a generator and run power cables, or do you go with a battery powered system? Either the Move pack and head or the Ceros battery powered. So Cirrus S. So those are based on the power, you might make that decision. Access to the location. How far is it from the car to where you're shooting? And what kind of terrain is there in between there? I've had shoots where, the actual distance from A to B was not terribly far and sounded great on paper, but had a 1,200 foot elevation climb, which took most of the day. Anyway, these are challenges you want to scout out and know about, and those will help you understand what you should be going for. Battery power or pack and head with a generator. If you're in a city and you are in a building, do they have an elevator? Do they have a freight elevator that you can use? Are you going to have to hand carry this up 10 flights of stairs? What's the parking situation? Can you park in front? Can you use carts to get gear there? Or you're just depending on hand carrying? All these are things that take into, what system you're going to go with. If your location is an exterior location, what's the weather going to be like? Are you going to have to rig things for rain? Are you going to have to be prepared for hot sun? Are you going to have to be prepared for the most beautiful day ever and not have to worry about any of those things, but you spent a week preparing for the worst anyway? Again, exterior location, access to power. It all comes down to power. I think that's probably our biggest takeaway, is knowing if there is location power that you can use, a generator that you're going to bring, or if you're going to run off batteries. And then distance from the equipment, or distance from the vehicle carrying the equipment to the location. As I mentioned before, did a shoot out in the dunes. It was about a 2-mile hike, and we couldn't get the car or vehicle any closer, so we had to carry, which is why we used the Cirrus. Battery powered was the way to go. And again, difficulty of the terrain. I kind of think I talked about terrain when we were supposed to be talking about interior locations. So all the stuff I said about the terrain at an interior location, think about that with the exterior. And the other things to think about is the specifics of the shoot. Are you doing a sports action shoot? If you are, pack and head T0.1 is what I think is the most precise sports action equipment. Are you doing exterior sports action skateboarder, using the high sync on this to create that same stop action effect? These are the things. Is there a specialty modifier? Are you going to be using one of the bronze satellite dishes? Are you going to be using the para? Are you going to be using a fluter? These are all things that you need to look into when you're deciding which system to use. As we already had a fluter question, fluters are great for really focusing light and creating a nice, precise, direct light on a subject. And so that's you would at that point have to work with the packs and heads versus the Cirrus to make that the most effective. So and again, let's not forget about the LED F160. It is a great continuous light, portable, battery powered. When we talk about strobes, these are the more commonly talked about systems, but that F160 system, LED F160 system, is really robust. It uses the same modifiers, so you don't have to change modifier mounting. It's the same ecosystem, and it works really, really well. So that kind of gets to the end of it. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, I like talking about specifics of shoots and different things like that. So if anybody has any questions, ideas, let's hear them.
Nothing right now in the Q&A section. Fritz, who has been contributing a lot today, thank you, Fritz, brought up as well that when scouting out locations, it may not be a bad idea to consider some sort of power system with a ground fault interrupt, so that if you do run into a situation where you need to change, or if you're drawing too much power, that strip will pop before your breaker will as well.
Absolutely. I know that the first inclination is to, if you're going to buy a generator, you look at some of the more economical options. With the amount of times that I've used a generator on set, it's always been better to rent from local grip houses, and they usually have larger 6,500 watt we call them wheelbarrow jennies, and they can allow you to use lots of power can come out of that, and you can run multiple packs on it. You can usually run your higher output 220 bait systems off of it and have lunch boxes all hooked up and all that. So when I refer to taking a generator, I generally refer to taking a, appropriate cinema quality or high, photo shoot quality generator so that you can protect your gear. Again, that's why we talk about grounded outlets, and, we work purposefully and deliberately, and we definitely want to make sure that we are keeping ourselves safe and we are keeping our equipment safe. If we do our jobs right, we don't damage ourselves or our equipment.
Okay. So I've got a couple other questions here that are a little bit off topic, but I think we've got some time that we can answer them here. Question
Absolutely.
first. When would you use an umbrella versus a softbox?
Ooh, loaded question, because I am not a fan of an umbrella. I never have really appreciated the light of an umbrella, whether it is a parabolic or a shoot through. This is a personal opinion on that. So generally speaking, I think softbox more over than I ever do an umbrella. I think of parabolics as a different, like a parabolic Para 88, 133, 177, or 220. I think of those as like the right way of doing what a umbrella thinks that it's doing. It's just not super precise. I think you can get more benefit out of a octabox than you can an umbrella. So for me, for my money, for my opinion, always go with a box solution without an umbrella. I don't like the umbrellas.
I think
Personal opinion.
I think a great political answer on this one would be it's going to come down to your workflow and what's going to work best for the look that you're trying to achieve.
Thank you,
similarly, I think this is going to be another question along those same lines. Any guidance on when you would use a fluter? I guess it generates a lot of hard light. Yes, most certainly. The fluter is more of a hard light source, and I will turn it over to Galvin for possibly situations that he might recommend.
Yeah, so the lens on the front of the fluter is called a Fresnel, and it is a focusing lens. So it's taking that light that you are putting through it and narrowing it down into a beam, and you have the ability to adjust how wide or how narrow that beam is. It is a hard light, but it has kind of a soft edge effect because of the size of the Fresnel. So if you think back to I believe the photographer is Karsh, who shot a lot of the early 20s Hollywood type things where there's that glamorous hard light look with a really harsh, not harsh, but a real tight nose shadow. If you look, those are Fresnel lenses because they only lit with hard lighting or continuous light. I mean, strobe, well, it might have been early stroboscopics, but most of the time, especially in all those things like Ingrid Bergman and those beautiful photos of the stars and starlets of the early film world in the 1910s and 1920s, that was all continuous arc light that they would shoot. And a lot of that was through Fresnel lensing. So you get a really interesting and kind of a beautiful light. I know also a lot of people use it to create sunlight coming through windows. So if you're doing an interior shoot and you have a window, you have access to outside, you can put that fluter out there and then kick what feels like a nice, warm, hard daylight through the window using the fluter. Lots of good opportunities. Good for product photography too. If you want to create that sun effect on a smaller product and you get that fluter in there and have it flooded, that too can be a really effective solution. Wonderful. I like the fluter.
And Valerie here in our Q&A section asked, so sorry if this has been said already, would you recommend a 400 or 800 for both portraits and food when using the Ceros L if you were starting with only one light? And I think that this is going to also fall into that category of it's going to depend on your workflow. And your workspace. Both are great options, and you're going to be able to have a lot of the same pros out of both. But I think it's going to depend on mostly how much power that you're going to be needing for your work.
So if you're looking for a one light solution for doing tabletop, generally speaking with tabletop, your camera and your subject aren't moving. So you can totally get away with a 400L or a 400S, because if you're doing tabletop, you're probably in a studio and you don't need the battery power. But I too like the battery power solutions over AC when it comes to monolights. That's what I go to them for, is their portability. So using a 400 is totally doable because you can up your ISO, you can use a longer exposure. Well, longer exposure doesn't really do much with strobes, but you can have your wide open. You can be wide open. You can adjust your ISO. Generally speaking, personal opinion, I like the 800. I think it's more versatile. So if you're looking to buy a little bit more output up front, gives you a lot more versatility long term. Using that 800, gives you that ability to use it as a key, and then use a mirror, whiteboard, shiny board, anything to create more, bounce and create a more dynamic lighting using your tabletop. So personal opinion would be 800, because I think it's widely more versatile. And I believe you'd mentioned doing portraits. I think once you start using the larger modifiers that make portraits easier or more attractive, or you're experimenting with larger modifiers, you're going to benefit more from having that 800 than the 400.
All right, perfect. So I guess it's probably time for us to come into a landing here. If there are no other questions, we'll let the Q&A session fill back up if there are any. But as we're doing that, I want to go ahead and say a big thank you once again for everybody joining us today. Make sure to follow us online at Broncolor USA across all the social media platforms, and on the web at broncolor.us. We're in the process of revamping that website, so we hopefully very soon will have a nice announcement so you can see what our beautiful design team has been working on. So we'll go ahead and I can end that for here. But for those that are going to be continuing to join us next month on November the 10th at 1 p.m., same bat time, same bat channel. I think I make that joke every time and it never gets old. We're going to be talking troubleshooting in the thick of it. So what we want in this case, of course, Galvin is going to be giving us some great information on how to keep a shoot going, even if something doesn't go quite right. But we want your questions. We want your horror stories. We want to hear all of the things that have gone wrong for you on set. So please look out for our social media post that's going to be coming with that, and send us what you have so that we can kind of help everybody get through. The knowledge of everybody helps benefit us all. So definitely, thanks again for joining us. And I think that's where we're at.
All right. Hey, yeah, thank you everybody for spending your morning with us, and thank you for your great questions. Also check out the Broncolor US on YouTube. Have a good morning or afternoon, day.